Blood drips from a lifeless hand. Dark energy pulses through the ritual site, thick, suffocating. This twisted ceremony is almost complete. A woman's life force is being torn away, offered up to something ancient. The hooded cultists chant with absolute faith. They serve a power beyond comprehension, something so vast it makes the gods look small. And here's one of those gods now, Eidos, the pagan deity of darkness. Softens. He casually turns to his companion, asking how the meal was. His friend Io, a tiny bird god, chirps his approval. Eidos nods, but honestly, the soul tasted bland. He pauses, letting the thought sink in. Sometimes he wonders if there's more out there than just this. But Io reminds him, this is their reality, always has been. They didn't choose these followers. They didn't ask for the blood rituals or the screaming sacrifices. Human prayers gave them existence. Human worship shaped them. So they should just accept it, be grateful they're alive at all. Then, a blinding light tears through the darkness. It explodes outward in absolute silence, no sound, just raw power. Eidos looks up, confusion flickering across his face. Who dares? A voice slices through the air, dripping with contempt. Busy night for your little cult, I see. She steps into view. Nemesis, goddess of vengeance from the Greek pantheon. Eidos' expression shifts. Recognition, anger, this is bad. He warns her. She's crossed into his domain without permission. She shrugs it off like she just wandered into the wrong neighborhood, but then she flips it back on him with venom. He knows exactly why she's here. She's talking about her followers, the souls that went missing, the ones his cult consumed like midnight snacks. She lists the innocent lives sacrificed in his name, a god who only feeds on fresh corpses. How pathetic. Eidos tries to deflect. He doesn't control what his worshippers do. Nemesis actually laughs at that excuse. To her, he's a slave, a god owned by mortals, nothing more. She summons a blade of pure divine energy, glowing with fury. This, she says coldly, is vengeance. The blade cuts through the air with lethal speed, but it's Io, his tiny companion, who takes the hit meant for him. Nemesis continues her speech about purpose. Real gods serve the world. They bring dreams. They bring rain and hope and freedom. They shape reality itself, forging the cosmos. So what does he contribute? What's his purpose? Eidos says nothing. His eyes are hollow, staring at his fallen friend. She presses harder. All he does is kill, destroy, create fear. Everywhere he goes, ruin follows. Why should a god like him even exist? Eidos kneels, gently lifting what remains of Io in his hands. Then, with a voice like frozen steel, he speaks. Must be nice. Nice to have marble temples and golden statues in your honor. Nice to receive offerings of fruit and wine instead of blood-soaked altars. She asks why he exists. He admits it out loud. He doesn't know the answer. But Nemesis isn't here for confessions. She unleashes a devastating barrage of energy strikes. The impact launches him backward, slamming him into the ground. She hovers above, mocking him. Too weak to even fight back, she dives down, her blade raised high, screaming about destruction. Is that really all he's capable of? Her weapon glows with toxic green light, divine poison. She drives it straight through Eidos' side, tearing into him. But instead of a scream, she gets a smile, a dark, unsettling grin. Nemesis tilts her head, genuinely curious now. What's changed? Eidos' eyes ignite with deep purple energy, swirling like smoke. He thinks about the cultists who prayed him into existence, the twisted devotion that trapped him in this nightmare. His hand shoots out, grabbing her arm with crushing force. Nemesis leaps back, her interest fully piqued now. She admits she's done her research, asked around the other pantheons. No god in any realm has a power signature like his. So show me, she challenges. What can you really do? Eidos raises his hand, and the shadows answer his call. Razor-sharp spikes explode from the earth, hungry and vicious. Nemesis dodges mid-air, barely avoiding impalement. Eidos closes the distance in an instant, no more holding back. Their powers collide in a violent flash of light and darkness. The shockwave flattens trees in every direction, but Nemesis just grins. Shadow tricks? That's your big move? Eidos scoffs. Her taunts are getting weaker. Nemesis explains how her power actually works. Pure vengeance. The more she hates someone, the harder she hits. Want to feel it? She asks sweetly, before he can react. Her fist connects with his jaw like a meteor strike. She follows with a spinning kick to his ribs. Eidos is launched through trees, through the air, through everything. He crashes into a distant mountain with enough force to crack stone. Then gravity takes over, slamming him back down, carving a trench through the forest floor. Eidos lies there, broken, admitting the truth. This hurts. It would be so easy to just stop, let this end, to finally escape this cursed existence. But watching Nemesis approach, something shifts. He's not done yet. His hooded cultists emerge from the shadows, drawn to their god's pain. Eidos sees them, the very humans who created this nightmare. He embraces what he is, the devourer, and he inhales their fear like oxygen. His eyes flare back to life, burning with renewed, terrifying purpose. Nemesis watches, confused. Is he feeding on their terror? Eidos turns to face her, his voice steady. You claim to be the goddess of revenge? He steps forward, power radiating from every wound. Then you should have known better. Never kill the only thing a monster loves. Nemesis stares up at him, frozen. What the hell is this form? Shadowy tendrils spiral upward around him. She grips her blade tighter. She forces a laugh. You think these cheap shadows are going to change anything? Eidos nods slowly. That calm agreement? Terrifying. He explains with eerie patience his power was never about shadows. It's creation itself. He takes darkness, fear, despair, all those negative emotions, and makes them real. Tangible, lethal. You attacked me here, he says, almost pitying her ignorance, in a place where fear grows like weeds. Now he gathers that fear, condensing it into his palm. He addresses her properly. Nemesis, goddess of vengeance. This, he says coldly, is my revenge. Have a taste of your own medicine. A beam of pure golden energy explodes from his hand. The blast swallows Nemesis whole, no escape, no defense. The explosion rips through the night like a miniature sun. Golden light tears across the sky, blinding and merciless. The shockwave flattens everything for miles. Inside that burning light, Nemesis finally gets it. This is what revenge actually tastes like. Eidos stares at the smoking crater, muttering that revenge feels empty. But as he examines his own hands, a new thought creeps in. Maybe there's more in this world that deserves to be erased. His hand is still stained red from the ritual sacrifices, but the blood dissolves into shadow as his transformation fades. He returns to his normal form, realizing he needs to say something. 5 months pass in complete silence. Toppered, pest, the cosmos keeps spinning. No one mourns, no one cares. We find Eidos lying in an empty field, staring at nothing. That fire inside him? Gone. He can barely muster the energy to exist. Then a new voice cuts through the quiet, asking about Nemesis. Is Hermes the Greek messenger god? And he's not smiling. Eidos doesn't even sit up. Are you here to kill me? Hermes grins wider. Oh, I have something much worse in mind. Hermes reveals he witnessed everything, including how Eidos slaughtered his own cult. Without worshippers to feed him prayers, Eidos will just fade away. But apparently someone important has other plans for him. Eidos asks bitterly if it's a public execution. Hermes chuckles. Think of it as a game. Our boy doesn't look thrilled about that. A game to decide if he lives as a god or dies like a mortal. This, Hermes announces, is his punishment for killing Nemesis. Eidos explodes forward, dark energy flaring around him. But Hermes doesn't even flinch. In fact, he looks pleased. Golden lightning crackles across his hand. I've been waiting to deliver this punishment personally. Before Eidos can react, Hermes grabs his face. He activates his divine speed, dragging Eidos along like a rag doll, then slams him into the ground with bone-shattering force. The impact carves a trench through the forest floor. Smoke rises from the destruction. Eidos lies broken as Hermes casually mentions he's lucky to be breathing. Hermes adds that Zeus wants Eidos' head on a spike, but the king of gods decided to use him as a lab rat instead. Eidos begins to rise. Hermes' eyes flash, he senses movement. He realizes too late, Eidos is already behind him, but a new figure materializes in a blur, blocking the attack effortlessly. Both fighters freeze. Hermes recognizes the sharply dressed newcomer immediately. This mysterious god. Yura explains calmly that he can't let Hermes kill a game candidate. With a chilling smile, he asks, "Don't we all want this to be entertaining?" Eidos isn't playing along. Why the hell would I participate? He growls that in all his centuries of existence, the other pantheons have only ever brought him pain. He's been utterly, completely alone. So why should he answer to some twisted higher power? He roars in fury. What have any of them ever done for him? But Yura explains that's exactly why he's perfect. If you died tomorrow, Yura says smoothly, neither gods nor mortals would even notice. In other words, our boy is completely expendable. But that makes him the ideal candidate for the god game, a death game designed purely for divine entertainment. Yura explains the purpose to purge gods, who no longer serve the new cosmic order. Eidos processes this, his mind racing. He thinks about his miserable existence. Who are they to decide his worth? He snarls that only he decides his own fate. His dark power erupts in violent defiance, but Yura doesn't even blink at the tantrum. He mentions casually that a higher power predicted this exact reaction, then unleashes a brilliant beam of light to remind him who's in charge. The blast hits Eidos directly, engulfing him in blinding radiance. Yura's voice echoes through the light. Just rest, and when you wake up, you'll join my little game. Eidos' eyes flutter open slowly. He's greeted by a small, familiar, feathered face. He can't believe what he's seeing. He whispers the name. Io? This has to be a dream, he calls out again, his voice breaking. Overcome with emotion, he asks if his friend is truly alive. The little bird god chirps in response. A tear rolls down Eidos' cheek. Eidos sits up in an endless white void, relieved he's not alone anymore. He rises to his feet, scanning the strange, empty space. Now sporting some fancy new antlers, he wonders where the hell he is. He remembers Yura's attack. This must be the death game. He tries to summon his dark magic, but only manages a pathetic flicker of energy. He stares at his hands, completely bewildered. What did they do to him? Suddenly, a piece of paper whips past his face. It flutters away into the stark emptiness. He snatches it mid-air. What's written on it, and why is it here? It's a profile card describing him as the god of darkness. Apparently, he's searching for the meaning of his existence. How dramatic. Eidos crumples the note in his fist. He scoffs like they know anything about him and tosses it aside. Then a single door materializes in the void. He and Io turn to face this strange new object. Our boy is already getting tired of this cryptic nonsense. It's just a simple wooden door. An exit, an entrance, who knows? With no other options, he approaches it slowly. Each step echoes in the endless white space. Every instinct tells him this is a terrible idea, but what choice does he have? He reaches for the handle. The door swings open, revealing a pathway through the cosmos itself. He stares at the star-dusted walkway, completely unimpressed. He mutters sarcastically, was a simple execution really too much to ask for? This whole game is already annoying him. He steps through, leaving the void behind. The door slams shut behind him. No going back now. Eidos takes his first steps into the arena. He walks the lonely cosmic path toward another door at its end, but he soon realizes he's not alone. 4 contestants, isolated on the cosmic stage. This is the competition. The first, a human named Natalia Williams, demands to know who he's up against. The second is Chernobog, a Slavic god who looks disgusted by the company. And the third, a complete mystery hiding behind a paper bag, very intimidating. Eidos sizes up his competition. What a collection of freaks. Suddenly a voice echoes through the void, greeting the contestants warmly. A sharply dressed figure appears, thanking them for their patience. He officially welcomes them to the first ever God game. He explains the mortals are competing for a chance at divine glory. Meanwhile, the gods? They're just fighting to avoid being erased. He warns them to follow the rules, but Natalio interrupts immediately. The human scoffs, calling this whole thing an insult. He tries to pick a fight with Eidos right then and there. Yura calmly asks why he finds this insulting. He challenges the gods, prove you're superior to mortals. Just win the game. Chernobog catches on fast. The Pantheons consider them all disposable. Yura confirms it bluntly, they're no longer needed in this universe, so prove you're worth keeping around. Natalio is still fuming, confused by the entire situation. He even tries asking the paper bag contestant for answers, gets only silence. But Yura raises a finger, demanding their attention. I'm to explain the rules? Eidos listens carefully, his mind racing. God game. If this is meant to determine a god's value, then why drag mortals into it? Yura announces their first event, gladiator jousting. Fun, right? Chernobog questions immediately, how is that different from normal jousting? Natalio mocks the Slavic god's appearance. Chernobog seethes. Yura cuts in, save it for the game. The rules are simple, knock your opponent off the platform. Use whatever means necessary to win. Eidos realizes what that really means. They're supposed to kill each other. Natalio, ever impatient, demands to know who's fighting whom. Yura explains only 2 of them will advance to the next round. But who fights who? He'll let them decide. A timer materializes in the void. 10 minutes to choose, otherwise, they all get eliminated. But Yura has one last surprise. He claps his hands, and golden weapons manifest for each player. Natalio finds himself holding a divine chainsaw. Yura smiles. This should speed things up. Natalio laughs maniacally. The paper bag contestant gets a wooden plank. That seems fair. Natalio points and jeers, mocking the pathetic weapon. Then he turns to the 2 gods, proposing an alliance. Team up and eliminate the paper bag freak first. Eidos watches, noting how quickly this human adapted to a death game. Chernobog observes that the paper bag contestant is acting more realistically, but fear makes him an easy target. The Slavic god then turns his attention to Eidos, claiming they've met before. Eidos confirms it, a few centuries back. Flashback, Chernobog tricking him into holding up the sky. Another flashback, spilling wine all over Eidos at a wedding. Classy. Chernobog laughs it off as ancient history. He suggests that as gods, they should unite against the mortals, playing to Eidos' survival instinct and desire for revenge. But Natalio interrupts, telling Dear Man to ignore that bastard and join him instead. Natalio continues his rant, calling Chernobog hideous. Eidos watches the petty argument unfold with disinterest. He glances up. The timer's already counting down. He remains silent, weighing 2 equally terrible alliance offers. He turns to his only real ally, asking Io for advice. The little bird's eyes seem to glow with silent wisdom. Io chirps twice, confirming their target. Eidos smirks. I was thinking the same thing. Natalio's face twists in disbelief. Chernobog is equally stunned. What just happened? Eidos stomps his foot, getting the paper bag contestant's attention. He looks down at the cowering figure. Get up. The mysterious contestant seems completely bewildered. He asks timidly, is Eidos really choosing him? Both Chernobog and Natalio erupt in protest, but Eidos calmly states that for him, the choice was easy. He calls out Natalio for being too eager to take a life. He calls out Chernobog for his arrogant divine pride. If this game is about deciding who deserves to live, he doubts either of them qualify. Then he turns to his new partner. The paper bag contestant finally speaks up. He says he knows what it's like to have everything taken from you, to be looked down on by everyone, to be constantly underestimated, and he's done being silent. He asks if Eidos knows that feeling of pure frustration. He offers his hand. Let's make them pay for their arrogance. Edos's eyes glow with dark energy. Are you truly ready to survive this? Paper bag contestant grips his hand firmly. Yura watches from the sidelines, nodding. Good choice. Eidos places a hand on his partner's shoulder. He knows that feeling all too well, but he senses there's something more to this guy. Even if he's currently wobbling with a wooden plank as his weapon, at least he's not as loud as the other two. Chernobog scoffs in disgust. Choosing a human over a god? The very idea makes him sick. He declares it's no wonder the pantheons want Eidos erased. With the timer ticking down, Natalio turns to Chernobog. He begrudgingly offers an alliance. The god accepts with dripping sarcasm. The two pairs now stand on opposite sides of the arena. It's on. Eidos asks his new partner if he's afraid. Gets an honest answer. The paper bag contestant admits he's not sure he can do this. He's never hurt anyone before. Eidos thinks that's a pretty standard mortal reaction. But that's exactly why he chose him. All those negative emotions, that overwhelming fear, it's a power source he could draw from. Chernobog catches on, scoffing at the plan. He sneers that Eidos must have a death wish. Eidos calmly agrees. He does. But he's not dying just because some god told him to. He'll go down on his own terms. So, Chernobog charges in, declaring Eidos has no say in the matter. Eidos knows the Slavic god is exploiting his one-armed weakness. With no room to dodge, he's also worried about his partner getting caught in this. He realizes he has no choice. He meets Chernobog's charge head-on with his own power. The Slavic god laughs, finding this incredibly amusing. He mocks Eidos for daring to fight him with that handicap. Save your strength, he sneers. Let me kill the useless human first. Eidos reels back from the impact, spitting blood. He warns his partner to stay back. He needs him alive for this plan to work. Natalio watches in awe as the platform shakes from their divine clash. The paper bag contestant stands firm, surrounded by Eidos's dark energy. Then the bag begins to tear open, revealing a horned, grinning god who mocks Eidos for having no worshippers. He sneers about Eidos having no monuments, no sacrifices, no legacy. He lands a devastating blow, calling our boy's existence a stain on the world. With a chilling smile, he asks, why does a god like him even exist? The blow connects with brutal force. Eidos is sent sprawling across the platform. Chernobog tells him to stay down and enjoy the show, because he's about to tear his partner to pieces, real sportsmanlike. The Slavic god turns his cold gaze toward his next victim. Lying on the ground, Eidos admits, Chernobog is right. All he's ever done is cause suffering. For so long, he believed saving Io was his only good deed. A flashback reveals his friend in a much darker, grimmer form, commences. But watching the strong pick on the weak reminds him of the torment he endured. As he grabs Chernobog's leg, something clicks. Maybe he can do one more good thing before he dies. His dark energy surges with newfound purpose. He channels every last bit of power into a single punch, a final, desperate attack fueled by centuries of bottled rage. The platform cracks under the sheer force of his will. He collapses, admitting that was the last of his prayer reserves. Now completely drained, he can only hope it was enough. Chernobog looks down, seemingly unfazed by the attack. Then Eidos's dark energy courses through him, shattering his divine form. He grits his teeth, unable to withstand the concentrated blow. But Eidos realizes with dread he's made a critical mistake. His partner frantically tries to warn him of a new danger. He turns just in time to see Natalio grinning like a psychopath. So much for alliances. The chainsaw-wielding mortal leaps into the air, ready to strike. He identifies Eidos as the biggest threat on the board. Taking him out now will secure an easy victory. Eidos can only watch as Natalio descends. He's too weak to even move, but the final blow never lands. His partner leaps in, blocking the chainsaw with his wooden plank. Eidos stares up, completely stunned by the save. Natalio can't believe his divine weapon is being stopped by a piece of wood. He sees, calling out the mysterious paper bag man. But the silent contestant doesn't even flinch. Natalio is completely baffled by this sudden show of strength. He realizes with shock he can't even move him an inch. His opponent is an immovable wall. His partner nervously asks Eidos for another magic blast, but Eidos admits he doesn't think he can win this fight anymore. There's a limit to his power. Normally, gods draw strength from worshippers' prayers, but he was born with the ability to convert negative energy instead. Without either source, using divine arts is nearly impossible. His partner's fear fueled that one attack, but it was the very last of his reserves. His partner panics. Eidos insists he's still figuring this out. Natalio interrupts, furious at being ignored. He revs his chainsaw, enraged that they've turned their backs on him. He lunges at the paper bag contestant, mocking his one lucky block. But the plank holds firm again, stopping the divine weapon cold. Natalio is sent flying back, screaming that weaklings should know their place. He stares in disbelief, rage mixing with genuine confusion. The paper bag contestant realizes his own strength wasn't a fluke. As Natalio attacks again, the plank begins to splinter under the assault. Eidos watches intently, asking Io if he sees it too. Every time his partner swings that plank, something's changing. The harder he hits back, the plank connects with the chainsaw in a blinding flash. Natalio stumbles, dropping to one knee. He's completely baffled. How did a wooden plank overpower him? But instead of finishing him off, his opponent offers a hand. Are you okay? The paper bag contestant seems just as surprised by his own strength. Edos realizes Yura's weapons must have special properties, but his partner reflects that power means nothing if you're too scared to use it. Natalio's eyes narrow with cruel understanding. His opponent will have to learn this lesson the hard way. He swings his chainsaw in a vicious, bloody arc. The blade cuts deep. The paper bag contestant gasps, stunned. Natalio laughs, mocking him for showing mercy to an enemy. This is a fight to the death, he reminds his victim coldly. If you're not ready to kill, just give up now. The two clash again, plank against roaring chainsaw. The paper bag contestant thinks it makes sense he'd be first to die, but even so, he declares he doesn't want to die here. The plank connects with a resounding crack. Eidos looks up. Fight back. Chernobog crashes to the platform. The paper bag contestant stares in shock. Eidos rises, telling him he can either accept what others expect or defy it. I made my choice when I picked you as my partner. His partner asks, what is he supposed to do now? The silent contestant seems to ponder this deeply. Then Natalio charges in for a surprise attack. His fist connects with brutal, blue-tinged force, but Eidos' hand shoots out, catching the blow mid-swing. Chernobog grins. You should have finished me. His body begins to shake and crack. Divine energy pulses as he reassembles himself. He reveals a terrifying new form, promising payback in full. Eidos and his partner watch in horror as Chernobog mocks his poor strategy. The Slavic god boasts he's got plenty more power to show them. Eidos is completely caught off guard by this transformation. Chernobog hurls the plank at Natalio, ordering him to dispose of the human. Natalio turns to his opponent, grinning. Finally, no more interruptions. He revs his chainsaw. Only one of us leaves here alive. The paper bag contestant realizes Eidos was right. Everyone expects him to be the first to die. But as he grips his plank tighter, he wonders, does it have to be that way? To survive here, he needs to change. A painful memory flashes back him being beaten down. He remembers the helplessness, the disgust. Bullies standing over him, mocking his appearance. One offers a solution with a cruel grin. We can't stand to look at your face anymore. They threaten him, never show your face again. The lead bully taunts him, daring him to try on the bag. With trembling hands, he slips it over his head. His tormentors erupt in laughter, high school at its finest. Their cruel voices echo, loser, freak, worthless. But back in the present, his eyes fill with new resolve. To survive, he must do whatever it takes. With the timer ticking down, he leaps into action against Natalio. Natalio brings his chainsaw down, ready to end this. He puts all his weight into the strike. The chainsaw roars. The plank connects with the divine weapon in a shower of sparks. Natalio stumbles backward, completely shocked by the force. His opponent isn't just sturdy, he's surprisingly quick. No formal training, but this clearly isn't his first fight. Then his attention shifts to the other side of the platform, where Eidos is taking a brutal beating from Chernobog's new form. How can he possibly help his partner? Natalio revs his chainsaw, eyes burning with rage. But the paper bag contestant meets the attack head on. I know exactly what kind of person you are, the kind who loves belittling others. Just like his old tormentors, he remembers their cruel, mocking laughter. The kind of bully who thrives on making others feel small. All my life I've done nothing but suffer because I never had the courage to fight back. But Eidos' simple act of trust changed something inside me. If I'm going to die here, I'm going down swinging. Natalio puts all his weight into the attack, but the blow stops cold. He's completely stunned by this turn of events. How is this easy target, suddenly radiating terrifying blue energy? Turns out the quiet ones are always the scariest. The paper bag contestant winds up for a punch. He sends Natalio flying across the entire platform. The bully skids uncontrollably, unable to stop his momentum. He desperately claws at the edge, barely saving himself from elimination. Natalio hangs on for dear life, fingers digging into stone. He curses his luck. He's this close to being eliminated, but his opponent walks over, looming above him. The paper bag contestant radiates power that is anything but human. Natalio quickly changes his tune, appealing to their shared humanity. He even suggests teaming up against the gods. Real change of heart, but his desperate plea is met with cold, silent judgment. The contestant brings his foot down with brutal finality. With one last scream, the bully falls into the abyss. Natalio screams, pleading for his life as he plummets, but his opponent just watches, his resolve hardening with every second. Meanwhile, Chernobog finally seems to understand something. Eidos looks down at the Slavic god. You're afraid. His voice is calm, almost gentle. I'm scared too. A real heart-to-heart moment. Chernobog looks up, completely bewildered by this confession. Then he realizes Eidos is drawing power from his partner's fear. The Slavic god's eyes widen with rage. He's been played, and he lunges at the paper bag contestant, screaming in fury. Chernobog's scream cuts through the void, pure, unfiltered rage. But his opponent? He actually thanks the god for being their second battery. His fist clenches tight, every ounce of that stolen divine fury now coursing through his veins. Ura leans forward, genuinely impressed by the mortal's sudden viciousness. He admits it out loud. He's starting to like this scrappy underdog. But the real question lingers. Is cruelty alone enough to flip this nightmare? We cut back to a memory, a tiny glowing creature approaching something massive. Eidos, wilder, more monstrous, consumed entirely by darkness. A god who'd been swallowed by his own chaotic power. And in the present, the clock's still counting down. Another flash. That same small glowing EO reaching toward Eidos' twisted form. Back to now. Eidos stretches out his hand, and power surges through him like a tidal wave. Chernobog just grins wider, confidence dripping from every word. He thinks he's already won. Yura's watching from above, looking more entertained than he has any right to be. But Eidos feels it, his power flooding back just in the nick of time. He clenches his fist tight, gathering every drop of borrowed energy. He knows that now. It's finally his turn to strike back. He flips through the air, body crackling with dark power like a storm about to break, and lands a brutal kick right into Chernobog's smug face. That grin? Gone. Chernobog's completely blindsided by the sudden reversal. Eidos doesn't stop. A brutal flurry of kicks, one after another, giving him zero room to breathe. The final blow sends the Slavic god crashing hard into the ground. The platform cracks violently under the impact as his partner watches in pure shock. Yura's eyes narrow, admitting he'd been curious why Eidos was allowed a companion in the first place. He'd assumed Eidos and Io were two completely separate beings, but now he gets it. They're two halves of the same whole. Otten's so tormented by loneliness that he literally split himself in two. And only by reuniting can he tap into his true power. What kind of isolation does that to you? His partner calls it genius, as Eidos explains the fusion was fueled entirely by Natalio's fear. But Eidos cuts through the celebration. They're running out of time. He turns to his new partner. Can he keep up? The paper bag contestant's trembling, but he nods. He'll try. Eidos accepts that answer, then turns to face the real threat ahead. Chernobog roars back to life, calling them both freaks at the top of his lungs. He mocks Eidos as a god who only brings suffering, and his partner as a coward too afraid to show his face. He declares with absolute certainty that the universe would be so much better off if the two of them would just die already. Someone's really got a flair for the dramatic. Eidos tells his partner to brace himself for the counterattack, but he's immediately sent flying backward across the platform like a ragdoll. Chernobog unleashes a massive wave of raw divine power. As he's soaring through the air, Eidos admits something dark. If he died here, he probably wouldn't be too upset about it. But the thought of being killed by scum like this, that's enough to make him want to fight even harder. Spite's a hell of a motivator. Their powers collide in a blinding explosion that lights up the entire void. The paper bag contestant braces hard against the shockwave, barely holding his ground. Chernobog reels back, genuinely confused. How does a mere human possess this kind of strength? The platform itself begins tilting from the sheer impact. Eidos realizes it immediately. The arena's shifting in their favor. He lands another brutal punch, taking full advantage, and his partner rushes in to follow up the attack without hesitation. The Slavic god's completely overwhelmed by their coordinated teamwork. He takes a solid hit from the paper bag contestant. How is he being overpowered? By these two? Eidos lands a final devastating blow straight to his chest. With the clock ticking down relentlessly, Chernobog screams in pure frustration. He can't believe it. These two were supposed to be weak. With seconds left, he can't understand why he can't win this. Eidos and his partner prepare for another combined assault. Chernobog roars in frustration, unable to comprehend how he's failing. Another brutal blow lands, shaking the god to his core. He refuses to accept that he could possibly lose. Not to these two nobodies. He reminds himself out loud, he is the almighty Chernobog, and he won't be defeated by a couple of nobodies. Someone's ego is taking a serious hit, but Eidos unleashes a final desperate blast of pure power. The attack engulfs Chernobog completely in a storm of dark energy. Eidos leans in close. How does it feel to be his new battery? Chernobog desperately pleads for his life, all that arrogance evaporating. He apologizes for ever underestimating him. He even tries appealing to their shared godhood. He asks what the other pantheons will do if Eidos kills him here. What happens then? Eidos just smirks. The answer? Absolutely nothing. He unleashes a final devastating blast of energy. He asks Chernobog why he thinks they're both stuck in this twisted game. Because to the rest of the world, they're both completely expendable. Ouch. The golden beam tears through the darkness like a spear, and the Slavic god's form is completely erased from existence. Eidos looks at his hand, admitting that was a bit stronger than he'd planned. He figures it makes sense. Gods would fear death the most, wouldn't they? The timer hits 0, announcing the survivors. Eidos and a guy named 4. Creative. Our boy looks on as the weight of the battle finally settles in, and his divine form dissolves back into shadow. The pieces of his mask dissolve into a cloud of purple energy. From those fragments, his companion Io reforms with a triumphant cry. Eidos congratulates his friend, job well done. The two stand together once more, separate but united, two halves whole again. A slow, deliberate clap echoes through the void. Yura floats above them, admitting he's genuinely surprised by how this turned out. He seems thoroughly entertained by the whole ordeal. He congratulates Eidos for winning against a superior god without any prayers backing him. Then he turns his attention to the other survivor, who's still shaking. Yura's gaze fixes on the paper bag contestant with a curious look. He calls him particularly interesting. What does that mean? Comment that leaves both winners a little confused and on edge. Yura announces that with the first round concluded, a new door materializes behind the survivors, glowing ominously. He tells them they may now proceed to the next stage. Eidos demands to know what that even means. What's waiting for them? But Yura just smiles, refusing to spoil the surprise. Gotta love a cryptic host. He simply tells them to find out for themselves. Classic cryptic god move. The door swings shut before they can fire off any more questions. His partner realizes the truth. They don't really have a choice here, do they? He states the obvious. They're nothing more than prisoners in this place. But he's not ready to die. He vows to keep fighting no matter what. He thanks Eidos for showing him how. Standing at the door, he promises to never forget this moment. Eidos just grins, telling him not to give him so much credit. He insists his partner was the one who saved himself. He just lit the path. Eidos turns his attention back to the void, calling out for Yura. Meanwhile, Io flies down to a piece of Eidos' old cloak. Circling it, he warns Yura to choose his next words very carefully. With a cold glare, he demands to be sent home. Now, but Yura just scoffs. Has one victory really made him this arrogant? A sudden unseen force strikes out from the host like a hammer, and Eidos is sent stumbling backward hard from the blow. Yura appears before him, telling the pagan god to remember his place. Eidos seethes, realizing the bitter truth. Even if they fought here, without a source of prayer or fear to draw from, he stands zero chance against the game's host. Yura tells him not to worry. He won't be joining his new friend. He'll be joining the other winners instead, Yura explains casually. Eidos seems confused by that. The host simply confirms his words, but he has one last piece of advice. He tells Eidos to at least try and mingle. And with a snap of his fingers, our boy is sent flying through the void. Yura's voice echoes after him. His life depends on it. He crashes hard at the end of the long fall and finds himself in a room packed with other contestants. He gets to his feet, already annoyed with his new company. He finds himself in a grand hall which he mentally dubs the box. He's surrounded by other divinities who don't exactly look friendly. Two of them whisper nearby, wondering how a participant is also a sponsor. Eidos is completely lost. What does that even mean? Suddenly, a new voice booms through the hall. A new host appears, welcoming them all to the god game. He introduces himself as Anansi, the trickster god, and reveals the grand prize. Any wish. Eidos is stunned by the revelation as Io squeals in excitement. His little friend seems to have an idea brewing, and Eidos realizes that with a wish, he could change everything. Everything. He looks up at the one who wields all that power, the one who runs this entire twisted game, the figure simply known as God. The Supreme Being welcomes the assembled deities with open arms, and Anansi gets the crowd absolutely hyped for the main event. The pantheons roar in approval, ready for the show to begin. Eidos watches on, completely baffled by this whole spectacle. Divinities from every corner of existence are gathered here under one roof. He wonders if everyone here is a contestant, but quickly dismisses that thought. A new voice calls out, recognizing the lone deity standing awkwardly. He reveals himself as Hades, the Greek god of the underworld himself. He smirks, finding a prayerless god to be a rare curiosity worth studying. Eidos listens as Hades questions what a god is without believers. He answers his own question, nothing but a lost idea drifting in the void. But he admits Eidos is lucky to have his unique power. Otherwise, he never would have witnessed that impressive fight against Chernobog. Eidos points out that he doesn't seem very upset about Nemesis. He reminds Hades of the goddess of vengeance he defeated, and asks why he isn't more concerned since they're from the same pantheon. Hades smirks, noting that Eidos doesn't seem too upset either. He admits Nemesis was a bit erratic anyway. Besides, he clarifies she was a champion of Zeus, not him, different departments. He then points out that the show is about to begin. Eidos realizes there's some serious family drama brewing in the Greek pantheon. He asks what's happening next, and Hades just tells him to watch. Anansi's voice booms through the hall, announcing the first contestants for sponsorship. The first is a legendary German warrior, clad in heavy armor that gleams. He carries a sword that's almost as big as he is. Compensating much? A warrior famous for slaying a dragon or two. You know, casual stuff. Anansi introduces the first champion, Siegfried the Dragon Slayer. He then moves on to the next mighty contestant with a flourish. The legendary Japanese heroine Tomoe Gozen, fierce and ready. Hades notes that these are some of the best warriors available in the pool. One goddess immediately decides to sponsor Siegfried based purely on his looks. Priorities, I guess. Her companion calls her foolish, preferring a more strategic choice. Eidos is still trying to wrap his head around the term sponsors. Hades confirms it, explaining that the contestants will be competing while the gods simply bet on who they think will win. When Eidos asks what they're betting, Hades reveals a glowing chip in his palm. The more chips a god bets on a champion, the more of their divine power that champion can borrow. Simple economics. He then taunts Eidos, who obviously doesn't get any chips. Tough break. Eidos questions the whole system of borrowing power. Hades clarifies that by betting on a candidate, a sponsor can lend a part of their divine art to their champion. He even provides a helpful diagram floating in the air. More coins equals more power. He adds that gods can spread their bets across multiple champions if they want, but warns them to choose carefully since so many are competing for the top spot. The goddess in green casually mentions she's shopping for a champion to invest in. Anansi then introduces the next contestant, a real wild card in this deck. Eidos listens as the host reveals the kid doesn't even have a name. How does that work? Hades smirks, suggesting they just use his nickname for now. Anansi presents the quiet fighter who stood against Chernobog himself, the one and only Four. Truly inspired naming. Four nervously offers a timid hello to the massive crowd, and is met with a wave of complete and utter silence. Crickets. The other gods can't believe this is the one who beat Chernobog, but Anansi hikes him up as a godslayer. Four tries to share the credit awkwardly. The crowd erupts in protest, with one god offering a bounty on the weakling's head. The other gods join in like a feeding frenzy, their voices a chorus of threats and insults. Eidos watches the spectacle, remaining silent as chaos unfolds. A new green-clad god asks if he and Four are friends. Eidos bluntly denies the connection. They're not. He thinks back to their fight, to the desperation burning in his partner's eyes. He remembers how they fought simply to survive another round. His new acquaintance flashes a grin that's all teeth. Totally trustworthy vibes. But the green-clad god interrupts with a sharp-toothed grin that cuts through the noise. Anansi turns, completely caught off guard by the sudden outburst. The mysterious god holds up a single coin, declaring he wants to sponsor the boy. The rest of the crowd looks on, completely bewildered by the insane choice. Eidos watches this unexpected turn of events, his expression unreadable. Anansi just laughs, calling the god a jester for his ridiculous suggestion. But the green-clad god insists he's never been more serious in his life. He declares he's putting every single prayer he has on the boy in the paper bag. The announcement sends a ripple of pure shock through the entire hall, and the other gods erupt in laughter, calling him absolutely mad for betting it all on a weakling. Anansi tries to calm the jeering crowd of deities with raised hands. He turns to Hades, asking if he heard that correctly. The green-clad god confirms it with that sharp-toothed grin spreading wider. He says he has a good feeling about this one, as Four looks on nervously from below. Eidos questions the wisdom of betting all his prayer on a single champion. All of it? The god acknowledges the risk, but asks, what happens if he's right? Eidos can only conclude that this guy is completely insane. Down on the stage, Four looks up, recognizing his new sponsor instantly. He calls him the god that saved him, much to Eidos' confusion. Our boy and EO have absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Down on the stage, Four bows deeply, thanking his new sponsor with everything he has. The green-clad god teases Eidos, saying they must be friends after all. Anansi tries to move the show along as the god notes that at least Four has a fighting chance now. He asks if Eidos is leaving, and our boy confirms it's a waste of time to stay. He turns to go, asking if his new acquaintance is done as well. Another goddess seems surprised that he's not sticking around for the show. But as a new figure peeks from a doorway, Io urges him to leave immediately. Eidos finds a door and swings it open without a second thought. He's greeted by a hallway lined with giant blades. Oh good, more death traps. He realizes there's no real way out of this god game. None. He reflects on its true purpose, to purge unworthy deities. He thinks back on the first round, remembering how their powers were nullified completely. He knows if Chernobog had been at full strength, they would have been toast. He understands the cruel logic now. Any god who lost was simply deemed unworthy. But he admits there's a silver lining to this whole death trap. The grand prize is a single, all-powerful wish. One wish to change everything. He thinks of the kind of god he is and the grim worshippers who created him, and realizes that with a wish, he could change everything for himself and EO. A new voice asks if he's truly that ashamed of his own existence. The host steps through a doorway, calling his desire pitiful. He questions Eidos' confidence after surviving just one round. The host leans in closer, telling our boy to trust him, because this game is far from over. He opens a new door with a flourish, announcing the start of round 2. Meanwhile, back in the Grand Hall, the sponsorships are getting heated. Two powerful figures watch from the crowd, with one calling his brother a complete fool. We meet Zeus and Poseidon, who seem thoroughly unimpressed by the spectacle below. But someone taps the king of Olympus on the shoulder. It's Hera, the Greek goddess of marriage, and she'd like a word. Now, Poseidon tells his brother to keep him posted on any interesting developments. Zeus asks what she wants, but Hera is not impressed by his busy schedule excuse. She scolds him for dawdling while she's left to manage yet another crisis alone. And from the looks of it, she's about one crisis away from filing for divine divorce. Zeus asks what the emergency is this time with a sigh. She reminds him of the rogue god who's been killing their kind. Zeus casually tries to recall the pagan deity's name, getting it completely wrong. Hera is furious that he can't even remember the name of his daughter's killer, but Zeus scoffs, certain that a weakling like Eidos won't survive the game anyway. Hera concedes that Nemesis's death was a shame, but Zeus scoffs, refusing to mourn a god who lost to a prayerless nobody. She sighs in frustration, telling him he's missing the point as always. She argues that letting a minor pagan divinity get away with this means an Olympian must be the one to take his life. It's about reputation. She reminds him they were lucky it was only one of his many children, and asks what happens if Eidos decides to go after another one. What then? She reveals that Eidos has already clashed with their son Hermes. Zeus seems surprised, but Hera confirms he sent Hermes to collect Eidos personally. She insists that if they don't act now, the other pantheons will see weakness. She warns they'll become the laughingstock of heaven itself, but Zeus has finally had enough of her lecture. He pins her against the wall with a thunderous crash that echoes. He agrees to handle it, but on his own terms, his way. Hera seems to accept this, her anger subsiding into cold calculation. Meanwhile, Eidos arrives in a beautiful, serene landscape that feels wrong. Yura explains that every divine participant must be shackled, and with that he wishes our boy good luck and turns to leave. Eidos is left completely bewildered by the sudden exit. He turns to find a new face waiting for him. Helios comments on the beautiful scenery with a smile, but Eidos finds it a bit too bright for his tastes. He realizes they must be in the land of the gods themselves, a place he's never had enough prayer to be allowed to visit. He notes that it's just the two of them, completely alone, and a dark thought crosses his mind. A chance to escape? But Helios warns him it's not worth the effort. He explains that Eidos' powers are severely limited here. In other words, our boy doesn't stand a chance in a fight. Besides, he admits he doesn't even want to be here either. Eidos reluctantly agrees with Helios' assessment. He can feel his divine power being suppressed hard, just like it was during the first round. He realizes it's the golden shackles that are holding him back. He glances over at his new companion curiously, asking if the grand prize, the wish, is actually real. Helios just smiles, turning the question back on him. Eidos reasons that a god with that much power must be real. Helios gets a little too friendly, asking if the wish has lit a fire in him, but Eidos is more surprised that the sun god even knows his name. Helios boasts that he knows everything under the sun. A real comedian, this one. Eidos is not amused, telling the sun god to keep his hands to himself, but he admits that he has to say. Once his eyes adjust to the blinding light, the scenery isn't all that bad actually. He then asks if it's just him, or if the sun is getting closer. Wait, Helios just laughs, pointing to the sky as fiery steeds appear out of nowhere. He explains that the sun is in fact getting closer, because it's being pulled by his own divine horses across the sky, and with that, he hints that Eidos can probably guess the next game. Helios leans in, asking Eidos a personal question. He wonders if our boy has ever been in a chariot race. Eidos looks out at the floating islands, completely baffled by the suggestion. Helios smirks, guessing he was never invited to the cool kids table. He explains that gods will pick two mortal teammates based on their prayer levels, and since Eidos has no worshippers, he gets to pick last. So much for a fair start. Eidos realizes each team will consist of one god and two humans. Helios grins, ready to explain the fun part of the game. Eidos looks out at the other islands, each one holding a rival team. The rules are simple. One person steers while the other two defend the vehicle. Helios explains that special infusions are scattered across the course. Touching one will grant their chariot a random power-up. He also casually mentions that murder is totally fair game. Eidos asks if this means the winners get to live. Helios confirms that a few top contestants will move on, and as for the rest, well, they'll be eliminated. He's way too excited to meet their teammates, much to Eidos' annoyance. With a snap of his fingers, two golden doors appear out of thin air. He asks if Eidos isn't curious to see the mortals who will be fighting by his side in this race. The first door opens, revealing a familiar paper bag-headed figure. It's Four, his former partner, who seems just as surprised to be here. He erupts with joy, asking if they're really on the same team again. Really? And leaps toward Eidos with a little too much enthusiasm. His graceful entrance ends with a spectacular faceplant into the ground. Eidos asks what he's doing, but Four is just happy for the reunion. Helios laughs, assuming the two are already good friends. Eidos immediately denies it while Four happily agrees. So it's complicated. Will be someone new as the second door begins to open slowly. A new figure emerges, her eyes glowing with a fierce, dangerous light. She introduces herself as Tomoe Gozen, the most feared female samurai in history. Four is immediately terrified while Eidos notes her powerful aura radiating off her. He recognizes her as a legendary warrior from Japan and wonders why such a hot commodity got stuck with the leftovers. Something's off. The samurai stares Eidos down with an unimpressed glare that could cut steel. She scoffs at being paired with a one-armed god, declaring them doomed from the start. She then turns her scorn on Four, calling him pathetic trash. Tomoe mocks him for being too scared to even show his face, and warns him to pull his own weight or she'll let him die. Simple as that. He realizes her charming personality is exactly why she's stuck on their team. With the unlikely trio now assembled, Helios moves on. He announces it's time to meet the chariot they'll be defending. Eidos looks on, the golden shackles still binding his power tight. He looks up in genuine surprise at what appears, followed by a chariot with a very unique design descending. The entire gloomy ensemble materializes before them in dark mist. Eidos is completely underwhelmed by their ride. ride. He wonders aloud why their chariot looks so depressing. Helios laughs, explaining the chariots are linked to their captain's nature, which he points out happens to be Eidos. Of course, Moe deadpans that this explains their gloomy ride perfectly. Helios climbs into his own chariot, eager to start the show, but Tomoe calls out, asking where the race even ends. 4 agrees, noting the lack of any visible track anywhere. Helios turns back, a smirk spreading across his face. He reveals the racetrack is the entire world itself. All of it. He explains that this race has no finish line. None. Instead, the goal is to reach him, the sun itself. 4 panics at the impossible goal, which Helios happily confirms with a grin. He finds a race to catch a star to be a perfectly fitting game for gods. As 4 questions the physics, Eidos reminds him they're talking to a sun god here. Helios tells them to decide on a driver since they're the last team to choose. The unlikely trio stands together, ready for the race to begin. Yura's voice echoes through the sky, asking if they're all prepared. He announces the start of round 2, explaining the Sun Chariot gets a head start. After that, Helios is forbidden from using any more power-ups. Fair's fair. He turns to the other teams with a confident smirk that says he doesn't need them. And with a cheerful wave, he wishes them all to have fun. How nice of him. The unlikely trio stands ready in their gloomy chariot, tension thick. Helios roars with excitement, eager to begin the chase across the sky. Eidos just stares ahead, his mind calculating every angle of this game. And with a flash of blinding gold, the sun god is off. 4 nervously takes the reins, looking completely lost on what to do. Tomoe is not impressed, demanding to know why he's just standing there. She tries to give him a crash course in chariot driving right then and there, but the shadowy steeds don't appreciate the sudden jerk on the reins. They take off with a violent lurch, sending the entire team flying backward, and their chariot immediately plummets out of control toward the ground. So much for a strong start. Eidos just watches, completely unfazed by their nosedive into disaster. 4 frantically pulls on the reins, begging the horses to cooperate with him. The shadowy steeds finally pull up hard, saving them from an early elimination. Amoe immediately scolds him for his terrible driving skills. The team stands together, a picture of dysfunctional grace somehow still alive. Eidos translates for the group, saying Io suggests they find a power-up fast. He explains that since Helios has a head start but can't use them, a speed boost is their only real chance to catch up. Just then, 4 spots a glowing infusion on an island floating below them. He asks nervously if he should try to steer them down to grab it, but 4 realizes if power-ups are the key to winning. They're about to have some very aggressive company fighting for it. The rival team bickers above the island, already a model of perfect cooperation. Tomoe, however, looks completely unfazed by the threat approaching. She orders 4 to get them closer, much to his absolute terror. As she explains, she just needs to be close enough to strike. Both Eidos and 4 are stunned as she summons her weapon from thin air in a flash of blue. With a new sense of purpose, 4 grips the reins tighter and agrees. With a new sense of purpose, 4 promises to do his best this time, but one of the rival warriors points them out, announcing their approach loudly. He readies his spear high, vowing that this time they're finished for good. Tomoe stands ready, her feet glowing with a brilliant blue energy. She meets his attack head-on, calmly telling him she's sorry. But there won't be a this time for him, and with a single devastating slash, she cuts him down mid-air. Well, that was efficient. The scene flashes back to Eidos' past, recalling a particularly brutal sacrifice in his name. He wonders why his worshippers ever thought that's what he wanted from them, and his companion Io lets out a sharp, affirming cry in agreement. He recalls that his worshippers never really spoke to him directly. They were always too paralyzed by fear to even try. He remembers wondering if they'd ever meet someone who wasn't terrified of them, as Io agrees with a soft sound. He didn't know when that day would come. But he hoped it would be soon as Tomoe cuts down her foe in the present. Eidos is stunned by her incredible speed and precision. He yells at 4 to get them under her position now, but the other rival warrior is suddenly taken out from behind by someone else. So much for watching your partner's back. A new hand grips the weapon, revealing a 3rd teammate joining the fight. The 3rd teammate, a horned warrior, lunges straight at Tomoe with fury. Tomoe realizes she's been caught completely off guard in midair. The horned woman's eyes glow with a fierce blue light of her own as she drives her spear forward with a furious battle cry. The weapon slams hard into the side of their chariot with a crash, but the warrior is stunned to find her attack was blocked somehow. 4 timidly asks if he did a good job with his wooden plank defense. Moe lands on the chariot, offering a rare compliment to the masked boy. He realizes he might just be the support she needs to survive this. The rival warrior can only stare in complete shock at the reversal. She brings her blade down with brutal, decisive force on the enemy. The warrior finds the idea of her own death laughable, impossible. Tomoe simply calls her scum for getting in her way. But a new threat emerges from the rival team above them. A new god takes aim from the sky, his arrow glowing with divine power. But Eidos leaps in front of her without hesitation, ready to take the hit. As the rival god unleashes a massive blast of divine energy straight at them, the blast hits Eidos hard, sending him and Tomoe flying off the chariot. The samurai looks on in shock as he falls past her through the air. Eidos plummets down, cursing the rival god for the cheap shot from above. The attacker lands on their chariot, ready for another strike to finish them. 4 nervously asks if he's getting better at this whole thing. The jury's still out. Tomoe screams at her divine captain to get them out of there right now. Her gloomy ride is pursued closely by a flaming rival chariot gaining ground. A massive explosion of fire narrowly misses them by inches. Tomoe can't believe she's going to die with these 2 idiots, and Eidos seems to agree. 4 points out frantically that another team is about to reach the power-up first. Eidos tells 4 to keep going forward, ignoring his partner's hesitation completely. He asks a simple question: does 4 still believe in him? The answer comes without a moment's doubt or hesitation. With that trust as fuel, Eidos unleashes his dark power into the void. Vicious tendrils of shadow erupt from the abyss below like vengeful serpents. The rival team can only watch in pure horror as the darkness rises to meet them. The tendrils wrap around their chariot tight, stopping them cold mid-flight. Guess they didn't see that coming. Moe stares, completely stunned by this sudden display of power. She looks at Eidos, who now commands the shadows with just his one arm, and she wonders what kind of god he truly is beneath that exterior. The rival team panics hard, trying desperately to cut themselves free from the shadows. Their divine captain looks on in complete disbelief at what's happening. He thought Eidos didn't have any worshippers to fuel an attack like this. How? Just then, a new challenger enters the fray in a flash of brilliant blue light. The rival god is still trying to figure out how Eidos is using his divine arts at all. He's completely caught off guard by the sudden arrival from above, and Siegfried's attack completely obliterates their chariot in one strike. Talk about a grand entrance. Back on their ride, the rest of the team turns to see what just happened. Eidos looks back, just as confused as everyone else about the explosion. He realizes another team is closing in on them fast from behind. Eidos asks 4 about the power-up they just secured from the island. 4 manages to grab the glowing blue infusion in his trembling hands. The energy surges through him violently, a power he can't control or understand. He shouts that something is definitely happening to his body right now. Eidos tells him to figure it out fast as 4 strikes a dramatic pose instinctively. But Eidos has a sinking feeling deep in his gut. This new team, led by Artemis, the Olympian huntress herself, is here just for him. Meanwhile, Zeus complains bitterly about Hera's constant nagging in his ear. She confronts him about the team he's sponsoring in this round specifically. He calls them an interesting bunch, including an ex-convict named Jaya, and the legendary saint warrior, Joan of Arc herself. But Artemis interrupts her father, Zeus, demanding to know why he's here watching. She asks bitterly if he really expected a warm welcome from her. Zeus calmly explains that it wasn't his choice to send her into this game. He claims there was a vote among the Olympians. Ah yes, divine democracy at its finest. Artemis mocks him for sacrificing his own daughter for entertainment value. She calls his actions incredibly honorable, her voice dripping with pure sarcasm. But Zeus offers her a way out of this game. He asks her to kill a certain participant for him in exchange for his help. Artemis erupts in a furious laugh, reminding Zeus he put her here in the first place. She scoffs at the idea of making a deal for her own freedom now, and sarcastically calls him the Father of the Year with a mocking bow. She points an accusing finger straight at the King of Olympus, roaring that he and all the other gods watching this twisted game can take their offer and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. Zeus tries to reason with her calmly, but she has zero sympathy for Nemesis or Hermes. He asks if she's really willing to throw away her immortality over pride. He reminds her that her chances of being the last one standing are slim to none, but she's already seen the cost of this game. 1 million souls have already fallen. Zeus insists that she won't survive without his help backing her. He even offers to get sponsors for her mortal teammates too. Her teammates urge her to listen, figuring one extra kill is no big deal in the grand scheme. Dernavak agrees, seeing the cold logic in Jaya's point about survival. He reminds Artemis that more sponsors would help them all survive longer, clearly annoyed by the divine peer pressure closing in. But she finally relents, agreeing to the hunt on one condition only. She needs to know exactly who Zeus wants dead. Give her a name. Meanwhile, back in the race, Eidos is struck hard by a glowing arrow. The attack pins him to the chariot floor, his power flaring at the point of impact. Artemis takes aim from afar, her voice a cold command to her team. Tomoe yells at 4 to focus on driving, but he seems a bit distracted. He admits frantically he has no idea how to use this new power coursing through him. Moe tells him to learn fast because they're running out of time and options. The Olympian huntress prepares another shot from her position in the sky. A confident smirk plays on her lips as she draws the bowstring. She decides 4 will make a suitable target for her next strike. She lets the arrow fly with deadly precision toward the masked boy, but our boy leaps in the way without thinking, taking the full force of the blast. He taps into his divine art desperately, unleashing his shadow manipulation in a burst. Form a shield just in time before impact. The barrier shatters on contact, but it stops the arrow cold. Ito seems just as surprised as anyone that it actually worked under pressure. Just then, 4 finally figures out his new power-up with a revelation. With a snap of his fingers, the steeds get a sudden massive boost, and their gloomy chariot rockets forward with incredible speed through the sky. Artemis watches them go, questioning if this is really her target worth hunting. She scoffs, figuring a prayerless god will be an easy kill anyway. Artemis tells her team to find an augmentation fast and catch up to them. She promises to get them all out of this game alive. Meanwhile, Eidos' team rockets through the sky at breakneck speed. 4 is just glad he figured out the power-up in time to save them, but he wonders aloud how they'll ever catch the sun god at this rate. He asks his teammates why they're so quiet all of a sudden, only to see Eidos slumped over badly, an arrow still lodged in his chest. Our boy coughs hard, the wound clearly taking its toll on him. The arrow clatters to the floor, its job already done. He clutches his chest tight as Io cries out in alarm beside him. Ida struggles to breathe, reassuring Io weakly that he'll be fine somehow. She scoffs, wondering how a god could possibly be this weak, that he's practically no different from a fragile mortal right now. But 4 immediately jumps to his defense. He insists Tomoe hasn't seen what Eidos can do yet, when he's fueled by the raw fear of his enemies in battle. The legendary samurai, however, is not impressed by the claim. He looks down at the wounded god, saying he doesn't look so scary now at all. Eidos looks up, admitting she's got a valid point there honestly. He explains his divine art converts fear into prayer as fuel, but since only 4 was afraid back there during the attack, he didn't have enough power to fully block Artemis's arrow. Simple math. Tomoe finally understands why he's so weak without worshippers backing him. Eidos then asks why she hasn't used her own divine power yet. Divine art is a god's own power, while divine power is borrowed from sponsors. He reminds 4 that Hades sponsored him, giving him access to borrowed strength. 4 is surprised, but Eidos says it all depends on the sponsor's generosity. Amoe watches them closely, finding their little partnership interesting despite herself. Amoe wonders what his deal really is, looking at the wounded god carefully. She removes her outer cloak without a word, a sudden, unexpected gesture from the warrior, and tosses the fabric over to Eidos without a word. She tells him to wrap his own wound. Simple as that. Eidos seems genuinely confused by the act of kindness coming from her. She quickly clarifies she just doesn't want him bleeding all over her chariot. Sure, Jan. As 4 gushes over the moment, she tells him to shut up immediately. Eidos rips the cloth with his teeth in one swift motion and wraps it around his chest tight, admitting it's a deep wound that stings. Eidos agrees with his little friend, a small smile crossing his face. He realizes with a jolt, this is the first time anyone's ever offered him something that wasn't a sacrifice. Moe snaps him out of it, demanding to know what's going on in his head. He immediately regrets her moment of kindness as they fly over a desolate wasteland below. A massive spiky basilisk erupts from the ground like a nightmare. Well, that's not ideal. Moe warns them not to look into its eyes. It can kill with a single glance. She tells 4 to get ready because she's about to handle this personally. Eidos questions her plan, doubting her weapon can even pierce the beast's hide. But Tomoe steps forward, a calm confidence in every stride. She explains that people always underestimate her true strength, always. And without another word, she leaps from the chariot to face the monster alone in midair. Eidos is stunned by her reckless move, yelling at 4 to follow her down now. 4 nervously grabs the reins, ready to dive after her. As Tomoe plummets, she reflects on how pitiful it all is. We flash back to her past, a lifespan honing herself into a perfect weapon. But she was always just a blade, wielded to fight someone else's war. And when her master fell, her own purpose died right along with him. She remembers wondering when her time would finally come, and what it would be like to live for herself instead. As she grips her weapon tight, she thinks perhaps this game is the answer she's been searching for all along, and unleashes a devastating attack called the Lion's Gale with a roar. The basilisk's eyes widen in shock as the strike approaches at impossible speed, and with one clean slice, she tears right through the monster's body. Eidos and 4 can only stare, completely speechless at what just happened. Tomoe lands gracefully, wondering what all the fuss was about. She smirks, figuring it doesn't matter if she slays it first anyway, and with a single brutal slash, she splits the beast clean in 2. She lands gracefully on solid ground, her divine power still swirling around her, just in time for 4 to swoop in for the pickup from above. The gloomy chariot soars away, leaving the desert and monster corpse behind. Tomoe scoffs, admitting she wasn't sure they'd actually catch her in time. Her teammates can only stare, completely dumbfounded by her power. 4 asks why she didn't use that incredible power against Artemis earlier, but Tomoe just laughs off his very valid concern. She reminds them that even as teammates, they're still rivals in this game. She reminds them that in the scope of this game, they're still enemies at the end. 4 tries to argue the point, but Eidos quickly cuts him off. He tells his partner that Tomoe is right to be cautious about trust, but he warns her that hiding her true strength will get her killed eventually. This is a death game against some of history's most formidable deities, and if she really wants to live through this, they don't have the luxury of holding back anymore. Io lets out an angry call, clearly seconding the motion loudly. Eidos translates, saying his friend told her to be a team player. Tomoe finally relents, agreeing to be more transparent with them, but 4 insists that if she's sharing, they have to as well. Eidos agrees to the deal, saying he has nothing to hide from them. He then tells 4 to go first, so much for volunteering. Suddenly, we cut to a massive explosion tearing through a German forest. A woman is sent flying backward, laughing with pure joy at the chaos. We flash back to 500 BC, where a pale god looks on in absolute horror. It's Balabog the White God, clawing at his face in despair. In his grief, he snaps the head off a small wooden figure violently. He looks on with cold, dead eyes, saying this was inevitable, and a monstrous Chernobog appears, calling him brother. Chernobog tells his brother to be quiet and listen. Balabog warns him about defying the new supreme being. It's suicide. But Chernobog accuses him of blindly following the pantheons like a puppet. Balabog pleads with him to think for himself for once in his existence. Chernobog insists that this new god is a threat to them all. Can he see it? A golden light begins to emanate from Balabog's form, growing brighter. He claims he's always done his best to protect his brother from harm, but Chernobog's rebellious nature always gets in the way of safety. Guess some family drama is universal, and with that, he unleashes a powerful blast of light at his brother. He says this is why the heavens will never trust him with anything. Chernobog lies defeated, branded as an outcast forever. Balabog can't believe the news of his brother's death in the game. The Supreme Being confirms it, disappointed in his failed prediction about the outcome. He calls the loss pathetic, especially to a god with no worshippers backing him. This, he explains, is exactly why he created the game in the first place. Balabog looks up, asking if he's been a loyal servant all this time. The Supreme Being agrees as Balabog volunteers to join the game himself. A manic look crosses his face, desperate to find this prayerless god personally. He scratches at his own skin, consumed by the need to find him. Someone needs a hobby. He looks out over a vast forest as Io flies into view in the distance. 4 sits in silence, processing the fact that Chernobog is truly gone forever. Balabog wonders how he can possibly atone for his brother's death. His grief quickly turns to a burning, confused rage at the injustice. Back on the chariot, Tomoe shakes 4 hard, calling him a useless paper bag. She demands to know how he's unaware of his own divine power. How? 4 panics, admitting no one gave him an instruction manual for this. He then timidly asks if she can maybe teach him how to use it, but Ito steps in, telling them both that's enough arguing. A helpful diagram explains that this borrowed power is just a fraction of a god's true art. Eidos explains that was likely Tomoe's first time using divine power in combat. Yet she wielded it with a natural, terrifying grace like a master. He tells 4 that the knowledge is already inside him somewhere. He just needs to find the courage to unlock it when it matters. But Tomoe has had enough of the pep talk session. She turns to Eidos, demanding to know about his power specifically. She asks if he feeds on all negative emotions, not just fear alone. She scoffs at the idea, calling his power twisted and wrong. A real people person, this one. She asks how she can trust him not to betray them for a power-up, and with a chilling look, he admits that she can't trust him, but he promises her that if he were going to stab her, it certainly wouldn't be in the back like a coward. As Tomoe glares daggers at him, 4 tries to break up the tense moment. Eidos grabs her arm and she warns him to back off right now. 4 waves his arms frantically, trying to get their attention desperately. He finally yells, pointing them toward the path ahead of them. They fly over a frozen wasteland, littered with glowing power-ups everywhere, and the grim remains of other contestants, which Tomoe quickly dismisses. She leaps from the chariot, focused only on the prize ahead, and snatches a fiery red infusion from the air in one smooth motion. Tomoe holds the fiery infusion high, vowing to cut through any obstacle. She tosses the power-up to 4, who nervously catches it mid-air, but her attention quickly turns back to Eidos with suspicion. She tells him she's seen his type before, completely unimpressed by his act, and questions what kind of wretched god wields such a twisted power anyway. Eidos agrees, admitting that for many this game is his just desserts. He looks at his hand, confessing that for a long time, he's wondered if the world would be better without him in it at all. He clenches his fist tight, ready to accept his fate on his own terms. But if he has his way, he's going to win this whole thing. He declares he'd use his wish to change his destiny completely. Tomoe just pouts, and he asks if that's not good enough for her standards. She reluctantly seems to accept his reasoning with a nod. She admits she's fought beside idiots with far worse ideals than his, a comment that gets a very mixed reaction from the team behind her. Suddenly, a new voice finds it fascinating that a god would hold such disdain for his own divine purpose. Eidos turns, completely caught off guard by the newcomer's voice. His teammates wonder where this winged god even came from. He wasn't there before. Those can only stare as the new threat makes his grand entrance from above. The winged god grabs Eidos' arm, his grip like a vice-crushing bone, and hurls him from the chariot violently, declaring that God was right about him. He sneers that a divinity like Eidos has no place in this version of heaven whatsoever. Eidos' eyes narrow as he takes in the situation while falling. He realizes they're being ambushed by other teams all at once. Everyone decided to show up for a party and they didn't even bring snacks. He thinks back to the weirdo who just attacked him from nowhere and realizes those shadowy forms seem strangely familiar somehow. Where has he seen them? The winged god easily dodges a blast from 4's new power-up. He nimbly avoids the fiery blast with supernatural grace, countering the attack with a brutal punch of his own. Eidos watches from below as he falls, a bit confused about what's happening.